Okay, so moving on through the session this morning, we've talked about neurodiversity, and there'll be another topic that we sort of come back to in just a moment. But I would like to bring Becky onto stage now. So Becky is from an organisation called Glow, which is part of that honeycomb group. Glow themselves are that sort of catalyst for change within the community. Focusing on those sort of areas of domestic abuse is that key part. And it's something that I've been well aware of, and probably many of us as well, in terms of sort of domestic abuse. And it's something that, again, is one of those things that we need to raise the awareness of because of how common actually this is. The statistics, and I'm sure Becky will sort of cover some of those. It is continually sort of growing. It becomes to the point where we need to raise that awareness. We need to look at educating individuals on what that healthy relationship looks like from a young age as well. And there's a number of different initiatives that are taking place. But Becky, welcome to the Empowering Through Awareness. Over to yourself. Oh, hang on, I've got you on mute at the moment. So yeah, to share your slides, if you go down to the bottom right, there we go. Yeah, down to the bottom right, share something, and you should see your slides in there for you.
Choose myself, show. Yay. Okay.
There we go. Over to yourself.
Okay. Thank you very much for having me here today. Emma, that was fantastic and quite a hard act to follow, actually. So yeah, I've called this Domestic Abuse a whistle-stop tour because we deliver training on domestic abuse awareness, the basic awareness, and it's normally 3.5 hours. So we've got half an hour. So I've just tried to sort of grasp the most sort of pertinent bits, but it's by no means a deep delve into it. So I'm Becky Fedoroff, and I work for Glow. I've worked in domestic abuse since about 2005, actually, for a long time now, in different roles. I've worked within refuge. I have worked as a housing advocate, supporting victim survivors who have housing issues as a result of domestic abuse. I've delivered training, worked in the community. So yeah, supported hundreds and hundreds of survivors over the years. So I got connected with Pathway because Pathway in Burslem, some of their wonderful students have provided some pamper sessions to our recovery hub customers. So some of the women within our service, and it's been fabulous. So I got roped into this. Cheers, Martin. Glow, as you mentioned, is part of the Honeycomb Group, the wider Honeycomb Group. We also have a homelessness service named Concrete. We've got staff's housing, and we've got Revival, which is a service that aims to keep people in their homes. Okay. Oh, where's the next one? So Glow's got a really hefty, ambitious mission. We've got this full circle approach, and our mission is to address, overcome, and actually end domestic abuse. Domestic abuse is a public health issue, as Martin had mentioned. It's so prevalent. Every one of us in here have probably been affected in one way or another by domestic abuse. If not personally, then we will know somebody who has been in an abusive relationship, or it may have been family members. Police receive a call about domestic abuse every 30 seconds across England and Wales. Someone's struggling with sound. Am I quite clear to everyone else?
I think it's just more internet. I think carry on, Becky. Don't worry.
Okay. So yeah, police receive a call every 30 seconds regarding domestic abuse, but we also know that it's a massively underreported crime. Okay. So a bit about Glow then. I've sort of colour coded it. So by addressing domestic abuse, we are commissioned to provide safe accommodation to domestic abuse survivors throughout North Staffordshire. We have 3 refuges, and we've also got lots of community properties as well. And within safe accommodation, victim survivors will have their own support worker to. So we're based. So if someone's just put on the chat, please do put in the chat. That's fabulous. That Birmingham City have just released their latest strategy for domestic abuse. We're actually based in Staffordshire and Derbyshire, so that's fabulous that they have, and it is on the agenda for most sort of authorities as well. As a result of the Domestic Abuse Act, there's been further funding, so on and so forth. So it is sort of up there on the agenda. So we've also got a housing advocate. I explained that was a role I was in previously. So she supports, works very closely with local councils, local housing advice. If someone's experiencing domestic abuse, then they should be treated as a priority through local housing teams. So she advocates on behalf. We have children and young persons support in refuge. Sometimes in some of our refuges, we have up to 30 children at a time, and those children may have been moved. Well, most frequently they've moved out of area, they're having to start a new school, make new friends, all the rest of it. So we do provide that support to children as well, to try and make that transition as painless and unscary as possible. We have the sanctuary service, so we can support with people who want to stay within their own homes, with lock changes, CCTV, that sort of thing. Derbyshire IDVA service. So we have the IDVA service in Derby. I don't know if anyone's aware of what an IDVA stands. If I throw out acronyms at you, tell me, and I will explain them. So an IDVA is an independent domestic violence advisor, and they work with the most high-risk victims of domestic abuse, those at risk of high harm or of fabulous, thanks Martin, of high harm or even sort of homicide. The Derbyshire, they represent victims at MARAC as well, which is a multi-agency risk assessment conference where all agencies get together to put safety plans in place for victim survivors. And we've got lots of specialist IDVAs. So, for example, we've got a BME IDVA, a health IDVA who works in the hospitals for anybody's that is there experiencing abuse, and they'll get that specialist support put in. We've got court IDVAs for criminal courts, and also family court IDVAs as well. So we've also got young persons violence advisors. So they're like an IDVA, but for young people as well. So they're really specialist and trained in that. And then, so in addressing overcoming, the Recovery Hub is my service, which I sort of manage. I'm really proud to manage. And we support female survivors of domestic abuse. So we deliver programs such as the Freedom Programme, which sort of addresses what it can be so confusing for people who've experienced abuse to understand what has gone on, why it happened. There's lots of self-blame. So the Freedom Programme's a 12-week programme. It's fabulous. It sort of unpicks that and puts the blame firmly where it belongs. And we do the Recovery Toolkit as well, another 12-week programme, looking at moving on after domestic abuse, and these programs are accredited to level 2 with AIM as well. And we do lots of social and wellbeing stuff as well. So Emma had mentioned, yoga being really good for sort of calming the mind and for wellbeing. So we have weekly yoga sessions, which I love. We have meditation sessions, we have workshops. Okay, and then so to overcome domestic abuse, this full circle approach, we've got the 180 project in Derby, and they work with high risk perpetrators, and it aims to reduce the number of child and adult victims by challenging attitudes and behaviours. So it's getting to the crux of it, really. If we look at statistics over the last 30 years, they've not changed. 2 women a week are still being killed in England and Wales by a current or ex-partner. 12 men a year are being killed by a partner, which is generally sort of same-sex relationships, the majority of those. But those numbers haven't changed. And like Martin says, if anything, it's sort of getting worse, I think, with the internet, I think, and young people particularly learning about sort of sex for the first time through porn. Sort of normalizing sort of strangulation and so yeah, it's getting worse. And young people between the ages of 16 and 25 are the demographic most at risk of domestic abuse, which is, shocking. It's like it's not sort of, it's with those young people. Okay. We also go into the ISS project supports any partners or previous partners of the those responsible for the abuse who are being supported through the 180 project. We also have education programs. We go out into schools and teach young people from primary to college age about healthy relationships. So it's getting in there early and sort of teaching them in an age appropriate manner about what's healthy and what's not. And there's awareness raising as well, which is what I'm doing with you now. Okay. So what is domestic abuse? The Domestic Abuse Act, which finally got through Parliament in 2021, has given the first statutory definition of domestic abuse. So can you put in the chat just whatever sort of comes into your head? What is domestic abuse? What forms does it take? Anybody? Are you there? Is anybody there? Yeah. Thanks, Iveta. So yeah, verbal, emotional, physical, absolutely. Mental abuse, financial. Yeah. Yeah. Fab. Emotional abuse. Yeah. And do you know what, Cynthia? You've put emotional abuse there. And out of all the sort of people I've worked with over the years, they will tell me that the emotional abuse and the mind games and the verbal abuse that they're harder to deal with than the physical abuse. It's long lasting, sort of the effects of that. So yeah, absolutely. So the statutory definition has said that any behaviour that is physically abusive, sexually abusive, violent or threatening, controlling or coercive, economically abusive, psychological or emotionally abusive is domestic abuse. And for it to be domestic abuse, the people involved have got to be over 16 and personally connected. So that may be a family member, adult family members. The majority is intimate partners, or ex-intimate partners. So that's sort of the definition. I think coercive control, that's sort of a fairly new term, and I'm not sure that everybody sort of understands it. So the definition is that it's an act or a pattern of acts of assault, threats, humiliation, and intimidation or other abuse that's used to harm, punish, or frighten their victim. And since 2005, that's been punishable by 5 years in prison. So, but if coercive control that doesn't involve sort of physical abuse can be sort of harder to prove. So Aries has put in there, in the UK, has one of the highest literacy rates. What do you see as the root causes of domestic abuse? How do factors such as education, socioeconomic status, cultural norms, and mental health contribute to this issue? That's a brilliant question, and it's one that I'll cover shortly. What I would say is that socioeconomic can happen. Do you know what? I'm going to leave it there because we are going to cover it, because you've sort of, that's the rest of the presentation, Aridas, but that's absolutely brilliant. So economic abuse has been sort of put as a part of the statutory definition now. So before we might say financial abuse, and this is something that you think about, maybe your partner taking your money or controlling your bank card, but it's a form of domestic abuse that involves controlling money and finances, as well as the things that money can buy. So it can limit one's freedom, safety, and economic stability, and often occurs along other types of abuse. And it's the same for all of these. It could be one type of abuse that is being used, but more often than not, it's going to be a mixture or all of them. I attended some training with Surviving Economic Abuse. They're a brilliant service. And the trainer used the analogy of a handbag to sort of define economic abuse. So the things you would carry, like your phone, your car keys, your lipstick, your sanitary stuff that you need. So if this was all taken and held away from you, that's going to stop you from being able to leave the house, contact work, say you're not going, contact your friends. So they can all come under the umbrella of economic abuse there. Okay, a big one now, and I think it's going to be something Martin sort of covers when you're talking about what did you call it, sextology?
No, sex extortion, essentially, or sextortion. Yeah.
Right, sex extortion. So yeah, that's also been recognised in the Domestic Abuse Act, that the sending of intimate images, or even threatening to send intimate images, is now a crime under the Domestic Abuse Act. And we see it a lot. So we'll see women who have had spyware installed on their devices. They can't understand why their ex-partner, who they've not spoken to, knows where they're going, who they're seeing, what they're accessing on the internet, who they've spoken to. We've got Ring doorbells now, which can be used as a form of control, who's coming in and who's going out, cameras within the house, creating fake accounts to abuse and harass victims or impersonating them, stalking and controlling victims via location apps and geolocation on social media. So yeah, it just goes on and on, really. And I thought it might be quite sort of relevant to sort of any young people as well. I'm dead old now, I'm 48, so it's sort of all a bit above my head. But, I think this is, again, we talked about young people being the highest demographic experiencing domestic abuse. And I think this has got quite a lot to do with that. So who does domestic abuse affect then? Who do we think it affects? Talk to me, pop it in the chat. Partners, children, family, the whole family, absolutely. The whole family, everyone. Yeah, Emma, basically that's the answer in short. It is everyone. So women, domestic abuse is primarily a gendered crime. So the majority of victims are going to be women. The majority of perpetrators are men, but we recognise it happens to everybody. With women, generally there's a higher level of harm and fear and repeated incidents than with male victims. 1 in 4 women report experiencing domestic abuse in their lifetimes. We estimate, 2 women are killed a week in England and Wales, but we also estimate that more than 10 women a week will take their own lives as a result of domestic abuse. And we've seen that within our own service as well. For women, pregnancy is a particularly high risk time as well. 30% of women will first be abused during pregnancy. If there's already abuse within that relationship, it escalates massively. So it affects men. 1 in 7 men will report domestic abuse in their lifetime. This is often in the same-sex relationships. And as I said, 12 men a year are killed by usually a current partner. Children, the Domestic Abuse Act now recognises children as victims in their own right for the first time. So if they're living in a household with domestic abuse, they're considered a victim in their own right, whether or not they witnessed that. We estimate that 90% of children are believed to be in the same or next room when domestic abuse is taking place, so they can get caught up in that. Pets are frequently targeted by perpetrators. It's one of the reasons why victims often feel they can't leave home, they can't leave the pets with that perpetrator. We hear of pets being killed. Neighbours are frequently, some of the first people to know about it. Friends, family, colleagues. So everybody is affected by it. Okay. Any questions so far? Is everyone okay? I know it's really, really an emotive subject, so I hope it's not too full bore for you. When Haridus, you'd mentioned about I will go back to that because right. I'll come back to that again because I'm not quite there yet. I'm sorry. So red flags. How do we recognise it? So abusive relationships tend to start really, really quickly. There's love bombing. Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen that. It is really good. I saw him speaking on a Mankind sort of conference as well, and it was really interesting. Yeah. So yeah, abusive relationships tend to move really quickly, and it can be known as love bombing. So, you know, somebody might move in within 2 weeks of knowing. You might have a ring on your finger within 3 weeks. It's full bore. If your partner wants you all to themselves and stops you seeing family and friends, that's a warning sign. And it could be a warning sign for colleagues or friends or family. If you know somebody you used to seeing, they're in a new relationship and you're not seeing them anymore. But it's difficult because, you know, when you're in the first throes of a relationship, quite frequently, you know, you want to spend all your time with that person and, you know, to the detriment of everyone else. But it's when it becomes that you're not allowed to see anyone else and you're becoming completely isolated. So if you're insulted, put down, or unkind comments, and this is something we might observe as well, we might look and say, well, that doesn't seem quite right. Another way, I think, a good way to identify and spot the signs of a friend is if their phone is going constantly, you know, from the partners, or texts on a night out, constant. That's always a bit of a red flag there. If they try to make you do things that don't feel right, won't take no for an answer, or use emotional blackmail, they always want to know where you are. And if you feel frightened around your partner, like you're walking on eggshells all the time, that's a phrase that women we work with use all the time, sort of walking on eggshells. So if they gaslight you, Martin, I told you the one about gaslighting, didn't I?
I don't think you have, no.
Well, I did. I told you in the green room earlier about gaslighting. No, I didn't, Martin. I didn't. But that's an example of someone gaslighting someone else, and I could have pushed that point and gone, yeah, you know, I did. So it's making you feel like the things you've experienced aren't real, or making you question your sanity. Okay, just my you just been gaslit. Well, I did it, didn't I? I gaslit him.
I didn't go on though. I was thinking, hang on, what do you mean?
I thought you might just go yes, just to make me not look stupid, but I'm glad you didn't. Another sign for me, a red flag for me, is when somebody speaks badly of previous partners. If they tell you that their ex was like a mad cow, or, you know, or if they've got children and they're not able to see those children, and there's sort of story around, you won't let me, that always makes me just go, oh dear, okay, there's sort of probably more to that. Okay, so gaslighting sounds like you need help, you're imagining things. There you go again. I was only joking. Well, if it makes you feel awful, and, you know, it's the impact of that, isn't it? So these are all sort of examples. No one's going to believe that. Start feeling sorry for yourself, and so on and so forth. One of the things you can do if you're worried that your partner might be abusive, or an ex-partner, or also like the partner of a friend or a colleague, or anybody, you've and this was put on a statutory footing under the Domestic Abuse Act as well. So Clare's Law gives you the right to ask the police if your partner's a history of domestic abuse. And this law was named after Claire Wood. She was killed by her ex-boyfriend in 2009, and her family relentlessly campaigned because they'd said, had she been aware of his history, he'd been in prison for previous abuse in previous relationships, she wouldn't have touched him with a barge pole. So if there's any sort of suspicion there, and if the police feel that there's information that could protect you, they will tell you that. Okay. So going back to that question then, what causes domestic abuse? Why does domestic abuse happen? Okay, so what do you reckon? So we've got, they all came up at once. Well, we'll just go through it. We're going out of time anyway, aren't we? So reasons that might be given is drugs, alcohol, anger issues, it's learned behaviour, experienced domestic abuse as a child themselves, the football team lost, poor mental health, peer pressure, jealousy, stress, insecurity. Okay, so our stance at Glow, and you know, lots of research and thinking around this, is that these are all excuses. They're excuses. They're excuses used by the abusive person, and the victim may share these beliefs as well, and society may share these beliefs. So all of these things, I can't remember who asked that brilliant question. All of these things can increase the risk of domestic abuse, of it happening, but they're not the reason. They're not the reason. So domestic abuse happens because one person wants power and control over another person. Okay, so the myths and misconceptions around this can impact on victims' survivors' perception of their experiences and stop them seeking help. I'd say, can everyone still hear me? Martin's disappeared there. Can you just put in the chat if you can still hear me? I'm talking to myself. Okay, fabulous. Okay. So there's mention of socioeconomic status there. There was last year in Stoke, the streets 2 streets away from me. Thank you. Sorry, I can't do much about it breaking up. I'm sorry. 2 streets away from me, a woman was her house was set alight by her ex-partner, and she died. She died. And that same week was the week where there's a head teacher in Surrey, I think, who was killed by a partner. He killed himself and their child as well. So that's sort of what do we train women to get out of this? Most of them are finished on those sides, if I'm not wrong. Then why? What we train women to get out of this? Most of them are fashion, no societal pressure. So actually, again, who asked? Let's we can look at that. We can just look quickly at the power and control wheel. So why is it so difficult to leave an abusive relationship? So this was a wheel developed in Canada. It's the Duluth model. It's a Duluth model that was founded when working with women, and all these different means were used to sort of control them by their partners. This is a photo taken in London by a policeman of a domestic incident, and it's just a depiction of why physical violence may never happen, but there's knives down that staircase. This is just in a normal house in London, and this is the scene they came across. Why don't people just leave? Why do women tolerate it? Well, leaving is the most dangerous time for a woman. It's the first month after leaving is when she's most likely to get seriously harmed or killed. They might blame themselves. They may not realise it's domestic abuse. They may still love the partner. There may be religious, cultural, language barriers. Pets, we mentioned that. Nowhere to go. Housing is a massive reason that people don't leave. 2/3 of refuge referrals are turned down, and there's a housing crisis both in the private sector and in the local authority. I think my time's about up, isn't it, Martin?
Shall I just sort of conclude? Don't worry too much about it. Don't worry.
Okay. So we share the slides anyway. So this is how victim survivors may behave. So you can read through that at your own sort of leisure. The impacts on health are massive. The women we see, they sometimes come to us 10 years after a relationship has ended, and they still can't move on from it because that emotional impact is so massive. Okay. Practical impacts: they might have to leave their job, education, legal proceedings, and it affects ability to reach full potential, which I know Pathway is all about, isn't it? And like I said, post-separation abuse, also recognised in the Domestic Abuse Act. And one of the reasons is leaving is the most dangerous time. And post-separation abuse will frequently carry on once that relationship is over. So these are ways to support survivors. More than anything, believe them. Believe what they're saying to you. Don't question them. Avoid guilting. Don't be asking why they didn't leave before. Empathise, don't sympathise. Don't say how that feels. We don't know how that feels. Every situation is different. Don't minimise and excuse. They'll have been doing that for years. And try not to judge. Reassure. Acknowledge strengths. Every woman I've ever worked with, I am amazed at the strength that has taken them to live through that experience and still be standing. And also just recognise that the victims as experts in their own situation. So don't tell them what they should do. Ask them what they need to happen. And these are some resources here. So there's a Hollyguard app that you can upload to your phone or download. I'm not sure which one it is, or the Bright Sky app. So these are both apps. The Hollyguard app was sort of created. Holly was a young woman who was killed by her ex-partner, and her family sort of they campaign now, and they devised this app. So you can store pictures on there, you can record silently, it's got a stealth alert. And actually last year somebody was convicted with evidence from a Hollyguard app. It was recorded, the incident was on this phone. Bright Sky app, that is disguised as a weather app. And we've got some numbers there because it's every, you're all over the shop. I've put sort of national helpline numbers. Was that on TV, Bonnie? It's so sad. She was a beautiful girl, wasn't she? And and this is why, I mean, these are the worst case scenarios that it's going to end up like that. But actually, it does happen. It does happen, and fear about leaving and what might happen is the reason many people stay. And you said about being sort of financially independent earlier. Lots of, so many victims are financially controlled, and they haven't got the resources to leave. Any questions? That really was dead quick. A whistle stop tour could go on for hours.
I really do appreciate your time, Becky, for being able to take us through these. And if anybody does have questions, please feel free to drop them in there, Becky. You can drop these contact details, or I'll drop them in the chat for anybody so they can reach out for that advice and support. It is really, very much raising the awareness of these support services out there for people, even if it's just to have a conversation. It may be that you've got a concern about your own partner, or it could be a friend of a friend, and you're looking for that advice and support. It is very much just being able to find that information. The apps are a fantastic idea of being able to sort of record that information, but also for people to find out that, really that they're not alone, as we've sort of alluded to. This is something that's constantly growing. We looked earlier at sort of the excuses that people use, and that's the reasoning and their fuel behind it. But really, with those that sort of toxicity that we have, it just continues to grow and grow. But what we need to do is to raise an awareness, and people understand that actually there is help and support out there, and they won't be judged as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things, sorry, just really quickly, the women in our service, it's being amongst other women. That's where the power lies and the empowerment lies, is being amongst other people who understand and get it, because, more people than you think do.
Yeah. Really do appreciate it. So please do continue to put any questions in the chat. Becky's also put her email in there. Please do reach out to her. You've also got the Honeycomb website and the telephone number on the screen. We will be sharing all this out on the emails over the sort of coming days as well. And these are services there that, just to raise your awareness, and you may need them at some point. We never know. Okay. Thank you very much, Becky. Really do appreciate, and hopefully, I know you've been into the birth and presented support there. We hope to sort of continue on with that relationship and look at how we can really raise that awareness, even into further areas as well, just like what we're doing today, but maybe more sort of specifically on that, and spending longer on it as well. So really do appreciate your support today and being able to share this with us.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Okay. So moving through the session today, I'm now going to bring, or just a bit of